What's up, guys? This is Andrea. She was my doula, and we're gonna be talking about Azariah's little birth story and what all happened with that. Also, you might hear her a little bit because she's getting newborn pictures taken right over here. So, anyways, just bear with us on that. But yeah, so I guess we have her phone out because it's got like timestamps and dates of like things that happened. So I ended up getting a membrane sweep on the 17th. I don't know that did much. Like, would you say it did?
It's kind of hard to say. Membrane sweeps,
I
there's
mean,
not a lot of data on if they are, because it's really one of those things that if your body is ready, it's very helpful. But if your body's not ready, the membrane sweep's not going to do much. Potentially, it definitely did not trigger any contractions. You didn't start having it's really nice it didn't irritate your uterus, which,
right.
Is a possibility. I think that it maybe helped things start
Maybe
softening.
When I started leaking fluid, it was about 48 hours later, right?
Yeah, that's
24 to 48. But on the 18th, so the next day, on that Wednesday, I went to the chiropractor at about 12 o'clock, and he told me, he was like, okay, if we align you right now, like, you're probably gonna go into labor tomorrow. And I was like, that's totally fine, because I'm 10 days past due on my due date, so I'm like, I'm good with that. And
at that point you were 41 weeks one day on chiropractic care. So you're already, a week past your guest date, your due date, whatever we want to call it. So you were feeling like, let's exhaust the natural options that we have.
Yeah.
So of course Maddy was hoping for as natural a birth as possible, the least interventions, especially the least medical interventions. So you did the right thing by, getting a membrane sweep, very low risk intervention there, chiropractic care, just kind of getting your body ready. So then the next morning is...
So then I woke up and I laid in bed for a little while, and then I went to the bathroom and I peed. And when I stood up, it felt like I peed myself, and I was like, that could not have happened because I just peed. And so
that's 41 weeks, 2 days.
Yeah, 41 weeks, 2 days. And so anyways, then I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure what's going on. And I was, maybe TMI, I don't know, I'm gonna say it anyways. I was wearing pads because I had the membrane sweep, and that can cause like a little bit of bleeding and stuff from the membrane sweep happening. So I had one of those on, and anyways, so then I was like looking at it to see what it looked like, and it was kind of green. And I was like, okay, this is weird. Like, at first it was a little bit brown, so I was like, okay, maybe it's just the like older blood, because it was a couple days ago, the membrane sweep. But then as fluid kept leaking, it was a little bit more green, so I was like, okay, let me text Andrea. So I texted her and eventually sent her a picture. And
Okay, so at 10:05 a.m., like Maddy said, we have all the timestamps here, which is always fun to go back and look at. I advised her, put on a new pad and let's just see kind of what it looks like. We can separate it from maybe what you had seen before. Let's see what happens. And it wasn't very long. It was just 10 minutes after she had called me that she sent me the picture. It was like a thick green, some fluid on the pad. That's when I advised her, let's go ahead and go into labor and delivery and see what they have to say. As we know, when we see green or brown, that typically indicates baby has pooped, right? It's meconium in the amniotic fluid, and different providers will handle that differently. So I just wanted to make sure that we had the provider on board, and just to see what was going to happen and everything. That's kind of where we'll say labor started, right? Was around...
Definitely not active labor.
Not active, no. The very early labor started with some leaking of fluid. Of course, 41 weeks, 2 days, so this is exciting, right? Like, something's happening, great. And you can kind of talk about your contractions were still very mild at this point.
Very mild and irregular. Like, it wasn't anything crazy.
Yeah.
And so after all that happened, I took a shower and kind of got ready at the house. And Andrea didn't tell me this till today, but she was like checking my location to see if I was leaving the house yet.
It was like an hour and 5 minutes later, after I told her to go to L&D, that she left her house, and I was sweating it. I was like, oh my gosh, Maddy, are you gonna leave? I'm so excited, I'm so ready. And I have her location, sharing locations, and I was watching her and I was like, okay, she's on her way to the hospital. Here we go.
So, anyways, I got to the hospital at about 11:10 because we got the timestamps, and they wheeled me back, and I'm like, listen, I can walk, guys. But whatever. So they wheeled me back there, and got my weight. I had lost 5 pounds at that point from fluid leaking because I was like 145 or 150 at my appointment, at my last appointment, and then I was 145 or 140. I can't remember which one. Whenever I got to the hospital, so that was crazy. I was like, yeah, I've lost quite a bit of fluid. Anyways, so then I ended up getting into the labor and delivery room, and the nurse that was there was probably not having the best day. So it was a little rough at first because, like, listen, this is a little TMI again, but I had to poop, okay? And she would not let me get out of the bed to poop. She was like, are you, like, you know, because we haven't checked you yet. I'm like, listen, I'm not at 10 centimeters. I'm not trying to push a baby. I just have to poop. Because I'm like, I would not be this chill if she was trying to come out of me right now.
When Maddy was telling me this, you know, what the nurse was saying, and that's definitely what the nurse was indicating was, oh, I don't want to let you out of bed if you have to poop. Any woman that's ever been in labor that has ever told a nurse that she needs to poop knows that the nurse is like, no, poop, we don't want you to push your baby out.
Yeah.
But Maddy was pretty confident, and she was right that was not what was happening. You had the cervical check shortly after.
Yep. And I was only 1 centimeter.
Only 1 centimeter.
So I was like, listen, Candy. I just had to poop. And I did. Yes. I had to poop in a bedpan, which was way more inconvenient than, because I was like pushing myself up on the bed like this.
10 months pregnant, 41 weeks, 2 days pregnant, just pooping in a bedpan.
Yeah, it was awful. It was
not necessary. Not necessary.
Anyways.
So at that point, that nurse had said that you could not get up out of the bed, period. Like that was a rule.
Because my water had broken.
That was a rule. So we were so glad when the doctor came in and said that was not the case.
Because I talked to him and I was like, well, I thought we talked about this. And he was like, yeah, you can still, like, you know. Anyways, so I was still able to get up and I was able to get on a birthing ball and stuff later on. So then whenever the doctor finally came in there, which, I mean, I say finally, it wasn't that long after I got there that he was there, but...
this is all during the day, which is really nice.
Yeah.
That this didn't happen overnight, because we know that you just get kind of different care sometimes at night. So. Yeah.
But so at about 1:30, the doctor came in, and I asked him, because different hospitals have different policies with like what happens when your water breaks, and so I was like, okay, how long do we got? Like, because I didn't want to have to use pitocin or anything like that, which we'll talk about that later, but. He was like, well, there's not really a time clock as long as we're, monitoring you and monitoring baby. Like, we'll give it a few hours and see 2 to 3 hours to see if the contractions pick up, and then we'll discuss more options if they don't. And so,
So, you mentioned time clock. So the reason why, we would even discuss that would be because water breaking, sometimes providers will say like, okay, our policy is 24 hours after water breaking, we have to make some decisions. And then, of course, that added layer of having the grain, the meconium, and the amniotic fluid. So this was a total win for Maddy, who wanted as natural of a birth as possible. So, and I think mentally that helps a lot too. You're like,
yes, because I didn't feel like I had
no pressure.
Yeah, exactly. The pressure thing. I was like, it was very nice to hear him say that. And then at about 2:00. She dropped off my breast pump for me so that I could try to, because that's, sometimes can help stimulate contractions and whatnot. And I think it kind of did for a little bit, but...
you definitely had some cervical change that happened. So, it's definitely possible that the breast pump helped those contractions be more productive, as we say.
I was bouncing on a birthing ball while pumping to see if I could get things going. Because I was
everything you can.
Yeah. So, I ended up being able to eat lunch, which was cool, because a lot of hospitals and doctors won't let you eat once you go in there.
Especially with when you have ruptured membranes or your water's leaking, they're like, oh no lunch, no food, no water even sometimes. So that was a big win for sure that you were eating lunch. I was super happy about that.
I'm glad I got a little bit of something in me to give me some energy.
So we got a big jump in time here. So that was 2:15 p.m. My next note is 5:15 p.m. That was our next cervical check.
Yeah, and so I was almost 3 centimeters but I was 80% effaced, and she was at station 2, which is
-2.
Yeah, station -2. Yeah, so, and that's like how low baby is in your pelvis area. And do you want to explain that more today?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. You were 2, almost 3, so the effacement was starting to pick up, and it jumps up dramatically, which we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there was we remember this is just with breast pump. This is just with, natural, like whatever's going on in your body. You were having some change at this point, but at your next cervical check, which is at 7:45 p.m., there was no cervical change at all.
So between 5:15 and 7:45, there was nothing happened.
So that just let us know there was no time clock, which is great, but we do know that in reality, you're leaking fluid.
Yeah, and with the meconium thing,
so the doctor came in at 8 p.m. to discuss pitocin.
Yep.
So you could.
And that's when I started texting her, because I'm like, I'm nervous about the pitocin, because a lot of from watching all kinds of YouTube videos and looking at stuff about it, like it makes contractions a little bit more intense and a little faster, and it's just your body's not doing it naturally. So I don't know. I just feel like I was just real nervous about that, because I had only heard of one person who was able to do have pitocin and not get an epidural. And so I was like, okay, if everybody else has gotten pitocin, I probably will too. So then I got nervous and a little scared.
Yeah, you can hear the escalation of fears now.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, well, if we start pitocin, then I'm not going to be able to handle it. Then I'm going to have this epidural. Then. Yeah. And this fear kind of starts tumbling in, right? So this is when our conversation, I think, started kind of picking up. So they started the pitocin, which we know, like, that's a synthetic. Oxytocin is what it is. So oxytocin is what's happening in your body naturally. Pitocin is just a synthetic form of that, which is why, as Maddy mentioned, since it's not your body doing it, it typically, they say, hurts more. Yeah. Right? It's more intense to work through. They started it really low at just 1, which is good.
Yeah, and that was at about 8:10 is when they started the pitocin. And I think they started it out of 1, because then I texted her around 9:12, and they had upped it to a 3 on the pitocin scale. And so I was getting a little more nervous, because I'm like, okay, they're upping this, and I could feel it starting to do something. It wasn't a lot, but like contractions were a little bit more consistent, not super painful, but just more consistent. And so once she upped it to a 3 and like skipped 2, I was like, oh no, like what's? I was a little nervous. And so I texted her and I was like, I'm feeling a little epiduralish, because I don't know, it was the fear. It wasn't the pain. I wasn't hurting that bad. Like, I was just scared.
Do we want to kind of talk about the environment that you were in at that time too?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that your environment at that time had a big impact on, you had the fear of them upping the pitocin, and you were afraid of what that would feel like. And then you also had an environment that was not exactly what you had envisioned.
Yeah, I'm a very not shy, but like more conservative person when it comes to like expressing my feelings and emotions and like things that are happening. And like, so Jay and his mom and my mom were all in the room, which was cool. Like, once I had progressed enough, because they ended up being in there for the actual delivery, which was totally fine and great. But when I was trying to like relax and let my body do its thing, the grandmas were talking, obviously, and like, I couldn't relax, and I didn't feel like I could move around or like do the things that I felt like I needed to do with everybody being in there. So anyways, the doctor came in to check me again, and whenever so they had left the room, and I asked her if she could tell them that I just needed to try to take a nap or do something and relax, so that they would stay out for a little bit longer. And so she went out there.
The nurse.
The nurse. So the nurse went out there and let them know that I was going to try to relax for a little while, and just to give me a while to do that.
I think that's a really good thing too. And I think a lot of women don't know that. If you're feeling in a situation, like, there's no shame in needing to have a little bit of alone time during your labor. Yeah. Your nurse is a great resource. Yeah. You can ask your nurse, like, you can say, I don't feel comfortable asking my mom to leave the room. I don't want to hurt her feelings. Right. Can you do it for me?
Right.
A lot of nurses seem to be really receptive to that, and they're happy to help you with that. So I think that was a really good a really good thing to do. So you had mentioned, you messaged me and you said, I'm feeling epiduralish.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, we're only at 1 centimeter. She doesn't really want the epidural. I'm on my way.
Right. So she came to the hospital.
So that's when I decided to go ahead and come into the hospital, which is exactly what I told her I would do. You know, I said, I'll either come when you're in active labor, which we'll get to that. Glad I didn't wait for then. Or I'll come when you want me to be there. That was just kind of what we had discussed. So when she said that, I was like, okay, this is the time. I'm going to go ahead and come up there. And we did some things for the environment. At that time, it was just us in the room, which was nice. We turned all the lights off. We had like some little fake candles.
Yeah.
We had some aromatherapy going, I think is always helpful. And then Maddy was able to really get in the zone.
Yeah.
Really get in the zone. And you were in the zone when I got there.
Yeah, because before she had gotten there, because nobody else was in the room, I felt comfortable. Like, I was standing up and listening to music and swaying a little bit and, you know, praising Jesus and that type of stuff. So when she got there, and I didn't know I could turn the lights off, she just turned the lights off. And I was like, okay, well,
we're coming in, we're going to make this in. And we had, of course, in like prenatal discussions, had those conversations. Like, I don't want the lights on. I think I would like this. I don't think I would like that. And so you're really in the zone. That was really good. And one thing that Maddy had indicated to me before I got there is that she was in the bed. And I was like, okay, that's not going to work.
Yeah, you need to
you
be
gotta get up. You know, you're in early labor. If you're not going to be resting, you know, if you're resting, absolutely, please lay down and go to sleep.
Right.
But if you're not resting, be moving, right? And when I got there, she was moving great. I mean, she was very, very, very mobile in her labor, which proved to be very helpful.
Yep.
As we will continue to say, right?
So then at 10:37, almost an hour after Andrea had gotten there, they checked me again, and I was at 3 centimeters, like actually at 3 centimeters at this point.
So that was one of those things I think that you were like, oh no. But then they said 90 to 95% effaced, and we're like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's a thin cervix. Like, that's really good.
And she had dropped a little more.
She was at -1 station at that point. So we were making some really good progress. And one thing that Maddy was doing that I thought was wonderful, where you were getting in some deep squats.
Yeah, when contractions would hit.
I mean, she was dropping it low, like really deep squats.
Yeah.
And I was just in awe. I was just watching, like, okay, this girl is doing really good. So while we didn't see a lot of dilation, we saw a huge change in effacement. I mean, we went from 80 to 95%, which is really good. And so I was feeling really encouraged by that, and made sure to let Maddy know this is good. Like, don't let that 2 to 3 centimeter thing like trip you up mentally. Like, we're looking at effacement here, we're looking at station change, everything's going really good.
Right.
So you can see as of now, we haven't seen a lot of like dilation changes going on, but we weren't too stressed. It hasn't been that long.
Right.
It was not a long time. It always feels like it's a long time, obviously, when you're living in it, but big picture here, she's responding very well.
And so, how long was it between the pitocin being put into 3?
We got the pitocin out of 3, I think at like 9:40. Oh wait, sorry, 9:12. It was out of 3, and then 11:39 p.m. Pitocin was raised to 4.
Yeah, I'm very glad that my nurse did that, because they can up it every 30 minutes if they want to. Right?
Yeah. They can up it way more.
Yeah.
I mean, she was still only at 3 on the pitocin, and then they went to a 4.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is very still low and slow.
Very glad that my nurse did that and was cool just going slow with it and just seeing what my body would do with that. But so then,
yeah, she saw that it was where the dilation hadn't changed a lot, so the nurse said, let's go ahead and raise you to a 4.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, great.
Here we go.
Because like at this point, I was feeling it. It wasn't super intense, but I was definitely feeling it. And so she raised it to a 4.
I do think at this point you had started to request pain medication.
Yeah.
Before the 4.
Yeah.
Because if we look at the times here, I wish I had written that down, but I didn't. Certainly, we're starting to feel like, okay, these contractions. Yeah, I think I'm interested in IV Stadol.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay, you know, let's see. So I think that was just like we were putting it in the air.
Yeah.
I don't know that you had actually requested it formally or not, but we had kind of like let the nurse know this is something she's interested in. Because one of Maddy's rules in her birth plan was, don't offer me pain medication unless I ask for it.
Right.
Which I think is a great, I hate to use the word rule, but I do think it's a great thing if you're not interested in pain medication, let your nurse know.
And they wrote it on the board.
It
They
was-
were like,
yeah.
we'll ask for pain meds if they're wanted or something
Yeah.
like that. So all the
So-
nurses knew when they came in
Yeah.
not to ask that question because I
Yeah.
didn't want to. I'm like, I know it's an option. Everybody who's going into labor knows that it's an option. So you don't have to ask me. I will tell you if I feel like I need it. So, and I ended up doing that. Okay,
We'll get there.
we'll get there.
Okay, so pitocin was raised to a 4 around 11:39 p.m. So,
And then I started feeling it pretty soon after that, right?
oh, it was almost immediate.
Yeah.
That when the pitocin, I think that's when she started really having to work through the contractions.
It got intense.
Pitocin raised to a 4, her body responded very, very quickly to that and very strongly. That's when you started getting really uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
at the same time, she was very tired, right? Because it's midnight
Yeah.
at this point.
And
She's tired. She's been laboring, and so we tried some different positions to try and help her to rest. We tried peanut ball on the bed, sometimes hands and knees. Kind of draping your chest over the peanut ball gives you a chance to kind of lay your head down between contractions.
Which was good between contractions, and I was able to rest between contractions, but when contractions hit, being in that position was not it for me in my body. But
Yeah.
it felt nice in between contractions, but I
Yeah.
did end up puking.
Yeah,
which-
that did kind of trigger a vomiting reflex, but I
Can
was
be
kind
good.
of like, okay, no, we're not mad about it. Like we know that can sometimes help with dilation. So, just comfort measures through that. And you got off hands and knees. You decided that wasn't comfortable for you. So then we, at some point, that did tell the nurse, like, let's get that stayed now. Like, let's go ahead. She's feeling like she's tired or she's ready for some relief there. So at 12:45 a.m., so about 45 minutes after, about an hour after they raised the pit to a 4, she came in and checked her. So you have to check to make sure for the stadol, you can't be set for their rule is 7 centimeters or more.
Yeah, with the stadol.
With the stadol. So
Which is the IV payment.
Yes, the IV pain medication was stadol. And so you're 5 centimeters. So we're seeing some progress with the pitocin going up was beneficial. We're seeing 5 centimeters. Okay.
And that was at 12:45.
This is 12:45 a.m. and she gets some stadol, which you can explain kind of how did you feel that helped you?
So the stadol. Okay, so I don't feel like it did much to the pain aspect of contractions at all, but between the contractions, I was able to really relax between them. Again, whenever a contraction would come on, I was still really feeling it, but like I was able to kind of chill out and relax and not really care as much in between contractions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll share a couple things on this. So different hospitals have different measures of when active labor starts. This hospital actually calls, I think, 5 centimeters active labor. I would have said beforehand that active labor was more like 6 or 7. And I learned through your birth 5 absolutely can be active labor. So I will say, just from an outsider, Maddy was a very composed laborer the whole time. She's very inward, which is great if that's what works. She's closing her eyes, kind of humming through contractions. Really, really peaceful outward
outwardly.
labor, right? So for the nurse and for me and for Jay, we're all just oh yeah, okay, Maddy's doing good.
And Jay had come back in the room.
Jay had come back in the room at some point.
Not the moms, but Jay had.
And he's super chill,
Yeah.
so that was great, and didn't change that. And it was good for Maddy because as things picked up, he was there to get his hand squeezed.
Yeah, I'm don't know how he had a hand after that.
Yeah, she was definitely leaning into that, which is very, very good. And at this point, with the IV pain meds, you're in the bed, right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you kind of loopy, you can't be. So she wanted you to be in the bed for, I think it was 15 minutes. And I remember at some point, I'm like, Maddy, you can get out of the bed now. No reaction to what I had said to her. I'm like, okay, something's happening. And then around 1:15 a.m., this is 30 minutes after she was 5 centimeters, her whole demeanor starts changing. And so for her, as I mentioned, she had been kind of humming through the contractions, really inward. At this point, she's got Jay's hand up on her chest, and she started whimpering, which I wish I could explain to you what that sounded like, but I cannot. But it was actually a very sweet little whimper that was happening, and I thought to myself, she was just 5 centimeters can she really be transitioning right now? And I'm just thinking, I think she's in transition.
Which transition is?
Yeah, it's just the next stage of labor. So
Between-
it gets you from active into that pushing stage, into the birthing stage.
Yeah.
And so at some point also, which we had forgotten to mention, when you got the IV Stadol, you said, let's get the epidural.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we
'Cause
had
I was
forgot
like,
to mention that.
let's just go ahead and get that ordered.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I might need
Yeah, and the anesthesiologist was not in-house.
Yeah.
So it was like a situation where it's like, let's call in the anesthesiologist. So she still had a little bit of that fear. She was like, I need that epidural.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. So when she got the IV pain meds and she realized that it wasn't quite doing it, she did say, all right, I'm ready for the epidural. Okay.
So they called him. He's not, so he had to be woken up and drive into the hospital.
Yeah.
So it took a minute, but.
Yeah, it did limp far, but. So yeah, I'm thinking 1:15 a.m. I'm seeing her transition, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to get ahead of myself, and I didn't want to trip anybody up either. And at that point, your mom had come back in, which was fine because she was really, like I said, very inward focused, working through those contractions.
And at this point, I wasn't scared to tell her to sit down and not talk because I could not be hearing people talking in between. I had to focus.
And it was good, yes.
Yeah.
Lights were still down low. Everything was good. So that was 1:15. No one was notified about transitioning. And so at 1:40, she got the epidural placed. And, transition doesn't mean that you're going to be ready to push right after.
Yeah.
There's time, right? You can transition. It's around 8 centimeters, and you still have to get to 10 centimeters after that. But for Maddy,
right before I got the epidural, 2 contractions before I got it, my body had started pushing by itself. I wasn't doing it, but it was happening.
And she didn't say anything.
I didn't say anything
that.
because I was like, if I tell this nurse that my body's pushing right now, they're not going to give me the epidural. It's not going to happen. So I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then the anesthesiologist ended up getting there, and I did get the epidural.
Yeah, so she got the epidural, and we all left the room so that she could get that placed. And while we were out of the room, so they placed the epidural, and then they checked her.
Yeah, because right after the epidural was placed, I was like, okay, listen, so I've been...
Fun fact.
Fun fact, I've been pushing for a couple contractions. And she was like, oh, well, let's check you. And while they were out of the room, they went ahead and checked, and I was at 10 centimeters.
That was at 2 a.m. So, yeah, she went from 5 centimeters at 12:45 to 10 centimeters at 2 a.m. So when I say she's responding well to this labor, things were moving quickly. So she was 10 centimeters. A different nurse came and got us, which was at that point, like she mentioned, both moms, right? Jay's mom, Maddie's mom, me and Jay. And they let us all come, which was so nice. And the doctor got there just in time. So you started pushing at 2:12.
Yeah,
so what was that like?
So the epidural definitely took away a lot of the pain aspect, but I don't think it set in as much as it typically does.
Oh no, it didn't.
So
I can attest. She could still move her legs, which was hilarious because she had
I kept getting a cramp in my hip.
Yeah, and so she would take her leg off the stirrup, and the doctor and I were like, "Oh my gosh, your leg!"
Like it's
She's
gonna
like, "No,
drop.
I can."
I'm like, "No, I can still move it."
It was
okay.
pretty cool, yeah.
So, but I'm super glad that it didn't take all the way because I didn't want, I wanted to be able to feel when I needed to push, and I wanted to be able to experience all that stuff. So I'm glad that it didn't take, and I didn't get it earlier. I'm really glad that I waited until I did to get it. Otherwise,
10 centimeters.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, it could have been a different story. And I liked being able to.
You could definitely feel when a contraction was coming.
Yeah.
She was like, okay, I feel one coming. So you still had that sensation, that pressure.
Yeah.
You could still move your legs. You felt enough that you felt the cramp in your hip, which most women who've had epidurals know that you can still feel certain things like that, even when it is full on. But it definitely didn't ever take fully because you still could move your legs and you felt some stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
After too.
And
so you pushed for 30 minutes.
Yeah. And during the pushing process, because I wanted to make sure the doctor was there, right, and ready to.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'd be sitting here, and then I'd like feel it coming on, and I'd be like, "Okay, are you ready? You ready?"
She
And he'd
asked
be like,
every single push. She asked the doctor, "Okay, I think I'm gonna push. Are you good? Can I push?" It was really sweet, and the doctor was really sweet. He's like, "Yeah, Maddie, whenever you're ready."
He's like, "Whenever you want to push,
whenever you
I'm
want
here."
to push, we are here for
And
you.
I was like, "Okay, great." But every time I asked him, I was like, "Just wanted to make sure that you're there, just in case."
Yeah.
And then, another thing that we didn't mention, I got a mirror.
Yeah. At some point during the pushing, it wasn't immediate.
Yeah, no, it was.
What happened? Oh, okay, I remember when it was. It's when we could start seeing her head, which everything was quick. Of course, she only pushed for 30 minutes, but sometimes it's really encouraging for the mom to be able to like feel baby's head. She can like actually put her hand down and feel, or some women would like to see a mirror so they can see baby coming out. Very encouraging. And so I asked your doctor, I said, can she touch? Like, do you mind if she like,
Did I do that?
You didn't.
Okay.
But the
nurse, wanted to, but I was like,
he never really like offered it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, obviously gonna do that. But the nurse, who has been fantastic the whole time, she was like, "Would you like a mirror?" And Maddy said, "I think I would like that."
Yeah, I was like,
because at that point you can, you're starting to see baby's head.
Yeah.
Which can be very encouraging for pushing, right? You like there's like a reward. You can see the reward there, which is encouraging.
Yeah. So got that, and it was cool to see that happening.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah, for me,
it's definitely not for everyone. Yeah, but it's
But anyways, so I had. Okay, good.
Had a little low power mode notification come up.
Okay.
So.
Anyways, so I had the mirror, and so I was watching her head, not during contractions, because like during contractions, my eyes are closed, and I'm like, they had these little things I could hold on to. My arms were sore for like 2 days because I was like really, really pulling.
Those are the things some people don't talk about, right? Like how, and like, I'm surprised your legs weren't super sore because like I said, you were squatting so much. I mean, you're like,
I think that's what started the cramps.
Yeah. True.
And my thin
she was squatting a lot, and then of course you used your arms a lot and push in the pushing phase.
I like kept pulling myself off the bed, and my doctor would be like, "Listen, you gotta scoot back a little bit."
Oh yeah, because it was different. It's not always like that. I thought it was interesting. They dropped the bottom part of the bed. That's not always the case. Sometimes they leave the bed as it is. That was just his preference. So it was interesting. So like she kept kind of like scooting down. We had to like push her back up. But it was good. It was all good.
But after baby Ed came out and they had put her on my chest, the mirror was still there. And I looked up and saw what had happened. And I was like, all right. What did I say? I said,
you said
maybe move the mirror.
And we're all like, oh, yep, I got the mirror. I like ran from this. I was by her side. Jay and I were by her side. Very cool. And so I went and I got the mirror and I moved it across the room. I was like, oh, she looked.
Yeah. But anyways, so that was a little rough to see. But anyways, so then they let me and Jay and like family and stuff sit there, and she did skin to skin for like 2 hours.
Yeah,
2-ish hours before they even weighed her or did anything like that, because she looked okay, and her little APGAR score, which what does that stand for? Do you know?
I don't actually, but
it's like how well baby is doing.
Yeah, and the highest is I think 9, isn't it, or does it go to 10? We obviously don't know a lot about APGAR, but she scored high.
It scored high. It was an 8 at 1 minute and a 9 at 5 minutes. So. She was good enough for us to do skin to skin.
She let out the cutest little cry right when she was born. Of course, that's so encouraging for mom to hear.
Made me a little nervous though because of the meconium. I was like, did she swallow that as she was trying to scream? But she didn't.
We were watching her closely. I was like, okay, we made it. And they did. They wiped her face immediately. They wiped her down immediately. Yeah. Which
wouldn't have been my preference if we didn't have the meconium situation, but we did. So she got wiped down.
She did, and there was a lot. Yeah, it was definitely a meconium situation, and it was a non-issue. Praise the Lord for that. It was a non-issue.
Y'all's prayers probably definitely helped with that.
Thank you. Yes.
But she was 6 pounds and 14 ounces and 19 inches long, and she was born at 2:45.
2:46.
2:46.
Sorry.
2:46. I was like, wait, what was
2:46 a.m.
2:46 a.m.
At 41 weeks, 3 days gestation.
41 weeks, 3 days. Yep. So that's the story of how little Azariah made it into the world.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was a good experience. Would do it again.
Recommend.
Right, and I strongly recommend getting a doula because like it really, really helped me not to be as scared or feel pressured into anything or anything like that. Like once she got to the hospital, and because she knew my preferences and she knew what I wanted and knew what I didn't want, and so that was really comforting to have an advocate that really knew what I wanted, because we had talked a lot. I hadn't really talked with my mom as much about things or with Jay as much about things, but we had talked a lot about it because obviously she's a doula, so that's what you do. But
yeah, I think that, especially in a situation like this, having you, like, you knew you had this kind of dream birth and you knew that wasn't going to happen because of circumstances. So having someone, that knows how to make those kind of wishes as fulfilled as much as possible when you have a hospital birth with interventions, like this is a great example of someone who wanted a natural birth, who had to have interventions based on circumstances, that still had a really good, non-traumatizing birth that was
good.
Really great, even with some things that you thought maybe you didn't want. You learned in that there are beautiful births happen all different kinds of ways, and so just being able to take in the information as it comes and work with it and still get what you want from it. That's what a doula is there for. Our goal as doulas is to get mom the birth that she wants. So
and that's definitely what happened. I mean,
so glad.
There was some things that happened that I wasn't wanting initially, but looking back, like, and I'm glad she was there, because like I probably would have got the epidural sooner because of that fear of the pitocin and all that stuff. But I'm really glad that I waited, because again, I was able to feel contractions and feel when I needed to push and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, so if anything, anybody watching can take this as a great encouragement, because you had mentioned at one point, I know so many women, you had a fear because you had heard so many people needing the epidural really soon in pitocin, and that there is no shame ever in getting the epidural when you need it. But waiting until you need it, that's a huge encouragement, right? Like not being scared, not being afraid, not getting the epidural out of fear of what you might feel, but feeling it first and then making that decision. You did really, really good. I mean, you learned a lot about yourself.
Yep. It was a very great experience, and obviously I have the cutest little baby because of it. So yeah, there it is. And I'm gonna go get her and show y'all her real quick.